I'm Lin-Manuel Miranda, and you're listening to Hard Knock Life.
Well, it's the NOC in full color, you see me? The Hard Knock Life, comics, movies, and TV, yeah.
Welcome to Hard Knock Life. I am Keith Chow.
I'm Britney Monet.
What's up, Britney?
Not much.
Dom can't join us, but you and I are going to be breaking down all the Marvel goodness.
Oh, yes. Lots of Marvel goodness.
You know, normally we record this podcast over the weekend, but I just had an inkling. If we wait until Monday morning, we're going to get something.
Mm-hmm.
We got something.
We sure did.
We're going to talk about it. We're also going to talk about Moon Knight and whatever else. Happy Batman Day. Batman streaming today on HBO Max.
Yes.
Isn't that crazy? Batman's already on streaming.
I know, I feel bad because I wanted to go see it one more time in theaters. I mean, I know the movie did fine financially in theaters, but still, for me, I wanted to see it one more time, and I didn't get to. So I am very much looking forward to watching it later after work on HBO Max.
Yeah, I think this weekend it crossed 750 million worldwide, which is, I mean, it's not huge compared to like the Dark Knight trilogy, which all grows like $1 billion. But, you know, in a pandemic, I think the budget was a lot lower than other Batman movies. It's definitely a hit. Like, no one should think that the movie did not succeed. This was the biggest DC movie in some time.
Yes, and it was critically acclaimed as well. So I feel like, it's, you know, it's more of a hit than people probably realize.
And it's just wild that it's only been in theaters for a month and it's already streaming. And I think you can buy it digitally too, right? It's not just on HBO Max. You can actually purchase it on iTunes.
I probably will get an actual I'm still into physical
Oh, for sure.
I'm gonna get one.
I pre-ordered the 4K Steelbook from Best Buy already, so it's not. Speaking of Blu-rays, Spider-Man came out on Blu-ray finally this week as well. So
yeah,
it's like these. I just remember us anticipating these movies, and they're already available to own. It's just like the unrelenting march of time.
I know. For me, I remember you would see a movie and then you'd have to wait 6 months for it to be on pay-per-view or something like that. And then from there, it was a 4 to 6 month wait for it to be out on video and DVD. And now it's just so much faster.
It was even longer when I was a kid. So it's crazy that last year we were spoiled, right? Because everything was day and date, especially Warner Brothers things. Mm-hmm. So I know that a lot of people were still, we're still in the middle of a pandemic. I understand people's hesitancy to go to the theaters. Although, we are in a different place than we were a year ago or even 2 years ago, where it's a little bit safer, even though there is another variant. But
yeah,
I totally understand people's hesitancy to go to the theaters. So I'm glad that they now have an opportunity to see the Batman. But like you, I enjoy going to the theater. I wanted to see it one more time in the movies, on an IMAX screen or something like that. But, I'm going to be watching this movie all the time now. It's going to just play in the background.
Yeah.
Let's stop beating around the bush.
Yes.
Right before we started recording, the Marvel gods, literally the Marvel gods, blessed us with a 1.5-minute teaser for July's Thor: Love and Thunder. We've been waiting for this trailer for a long time.
Yes.
And before you know it, it's going to be available to stream too.
I know. So fast.
What do you think of Thor 4, I guess?
I'm on board. I very much like what Taika has done with Thor Ragnarok. I did like the first Thor. I know I'm one of the few only people who actually like that movie, but
I think the first Thor is good. It's the second one that I think is a little iffy.
The second one to me is just, it's not good. And I feel like the first one's really good. And I think it's really funny because when the first phase of MCU, my favorite character was Loki and Captain America. Phase 1, that's who my favorite character was. And now we're, phase 4, phase 5, and Thor is actually pretty up there now for me, because I used to hate Thor. I used to be oh, Thor's so I think he just reminded me of of someone. He just reminded me of someone who I knew in my personal life, and I was just you're so so arrogant and all this stuff. So like I really understood like Loki's like, oh, with Thor. So
Well, and of the original Avengers, Thor is the only one that's still kicking around. Well, I guess Hulk is around. He's going to be in the She-Hulk show, but I feel like Jennifer Walters is going to be a replacement for Mark Ruffalo's.
I think so too.
Kate Bishop is replacing Jeremy Renner. Yelena Belova is, of course, replacing Scott. Like everyone's being replaced. Well, I guess that's the plot of this movie too, is because Jane Foster takes on the Thor mantle.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just a matter of if Natalie Portman is signed on to actually do movies as Thor, or if Tessa Thompson is going to be the Asgardian character that we follow.
Right. Well, either way, like he's the only one from that first phase to get a fourth movie, right? Because Cap was a trilogy, Iron Man was a trilogy.
Technically, we are getting a Captain America 4, but
with Sam Wilson.
Evans.
Yeah.
Yes, technically. Well, it would be.
But this is the fourth solo with Chris Hemsworth, right? Like Evans and Downey, they've all graduated beyond the MCU. And the cool thing about this, at least we've only seen 90 seconds of this movie, so who knows what we're getting. But I was already kind of interested to see how Taika would like handle the Guardians, and just from like the 25 seconds of screen time the Guardians get. And I don't think they're going to be a big part of the movie. I think they're really just like the first act, because Thor goes off with them at the end of Endgame.
Yeah.
But it kind of makes me want, as much as I dig James Gunn's take on the Guardians, I kind of want a Taika Guardians movie.
It would probably be a lot of fun. I don't know. Everything Taika's done so far that I've seen is just, to me, has been great. So I don't know. I feel like it'll be fun. And I like the little bit that we saw. Yeah, I don't know. I'm very interested in what's going to happen. There wasn't too much, for people who haven't seen the trailer yet, just in case, there wasn't a lot of action yet. It's more kind of setting up like the plot of where Thor is emotionally, like mentally type of thing. Because as we know, he's been through the ringer emotionally and mentally the last several movies.
Yeah, and I hope that the first act is a fairly extensive one, because I kind of did think that Thor and the Guardians was going to be a really cool follow-up. I thought it was, before they announced Thor and Love and Thunder, I thought it was going to be probably the next. I thought more Thor would be in Guardians 3 than the Guardians would be in Thor 4, like at the end of Endgame. I mean,
yeah,
because just the idea of like the Asgardians of the galaxy, just kind of like I would love to see their chemistry, because Pratt and Hemsworth, even in the trailer, have really great comedic chemistry. But if we only get like one act of them and then the rest of it is him, it looks like. So if we just kind of take the footage and kind of extrapolate what we think is going to happen, I think what basically he goes on like a Zack Snyder, Ben Affleck training regimen to get svelte again with the chains and the tires.
Yeah. So,
but just extrapolating from the footage, I think the first act is him like with the Guardians. He gets svelte, and Star-Lord's like, fuck, I gotta compete with like sexy Thor again.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, Thor is like, I don't feel like superheroing anymore. The Guardians leave him behind with Korg, it looks like. And then he's just like on a vision quest for like the rest of the movie, and encounters Jane at the end. And that's the trailer.
Yes.
Basically, right?
That's essentially the trailer, yes.
We see Valkyrie in like a United Nations kind of meeting. Because I remember, if you recall, I think it was in No Way Home, one of the Easter eggs was some kind of political fallout in New Asgard, and the king of New Asgard is like in trouble or something. So that might be setting up something in this movie.
I don't even know if I remember that mentioning Asgard. So now I'm like, all right.
Well, I think it was like a scroll at the bottom of a TV screen. Like, it wasn't even like dialogue. It was just like eagle-eyed fans who are like, pointing out every single little Easter egg. But anyway, we finally got our footage, and I'm stoked. What did you think of, she doesn't say anything, but do we get to see finally not set leaked footage, but actual final VFX footage of Natalie in the Jane Foster costume? What did you think?
I think she looks great. I don't know. I love Natalie Portman. I loved her as Padme, and I wish she got more, got to do more action as Padme.
We need the Padme series on Disney Plus.
Right. Even if it's animated, I would be okay with it, just because I feel like, Padme, you saw her more in Clone Wars doing like action-y things, but not so much in like all the movies except for Attack of the Clones, really.
And
Maybe
yeah,
a
even
little
then
bit
she
of
doesn't really.
Phantom.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just very little, and I don't know. I feel like she's someone who can do action more than like she's probably allowed to do, or the type of role she's also done. So I'm very excited to see her kick some butt as Lady Thor, or Thor, just Thor.
right, just Thor, right. That version of the character kind of, this is the era that Jane Foster took over Thor. I think what was it? It was called like Marvel U, I think.
Yeah,
Something like
something
that.
like that. And
Yeah.
it was a whole bunch of different characters with Captain Marvel, then Sam Wilson as Captain America. Yeah.
Yeah, this is about like almost 10 years ago, I think, like that era of the comics. Like the comics now have kind of moved on from that era, but that's where we are now. Like if we just think back to those storylines, that's kind of where
Yeah.
the movie universe has reached. But yeah, I'm super psyched that we got the Thor trailer, because I think we were anticipating it maybe last week or the week before, because there was some concept art that, or like not even concept art, but like marketing materials that were being leaked, like action figures and some of the stuff that they put on like, packaging. And
Yes.
so we already saw like concepts of what the costumes look like, but just seeing it in action, you knew there was a Guardians of the Galaxy influence because they had the needle drop of Guns N' Roses in the background. It was like, okay, they got to give us the pop music soundtrack. But yeah, July 8th is when Thor is coming out. Until then, we have a couple other Marvel things that tide us over. The latest being, of course, it wouldn't be Hard Knock Life if we did not break down the latest thing on Disney Plus. Episode 3 of Moon Knight dropped last Wednesday. Are you still?
I'm still on board.
Still on board?
Yeah.
Full disclosure, episode 3 is where I kind of dropped off a little bit when I was, I think Suarez said this, I think last week when he was guesting. It's kind of weird because I feel like I've watched these episodes so long ago that people are just now talking about things, and I want to say something. Oh yeah, that hasn't happened yet. And so like episode 3 was the one where I was like, I don't know if I'm feeling the show anymore, but I'm glad you still liked it.
I feel like I don't know if it's just that I'm kind of, when it comes to Marvel stuff, I'm more easier to please. And I'm like, okay, like that still works for me.
It's got to be really bad for you to be like out, right?
Yeah, I feel like how some people should know something is actually really bad and said to you, if I'm like, no, this is not it at all. I don't know. I thought it was fun, and I kind of like the whole like between Mark and Steve. Like, why would you do that? I didn't do that. That wasn't me. Oh, then who was it? I don't know. Like,
oh, right, the third identity. Yeah.
Yes, I'm vibing with them not knowing that there is a third, and I like seeing more of Layla. I like that whole bit with Layla. I don't know, and then I don't know if there's some type of romance going on between Khonshu and the other god. I'm like,
I think so. I think that was more than hinted. Like, what did she say? Like, he loved her melodies or whatever. Like, okay.
Yeah. I was like,
But I think that's where I did trail off a little bit, honestly, is like meeting the Ennead was not as cool as I was thinking it was going to be. Like,
because they were all in their avatars.
Yeah, it came off very, kind of CW, right? Where it's like you can't actually see the mythical figures, right? Everyone's just like in business suits with their eyes glowing white. And it's just kind of, oh, this is like budget, especially as dope as Khonshu looks, right? Like it's basically like, it's almost like they blew their CGI budget on Khonshu. So when we see the other gods, it's just like people in suits.
Yeah.
And it was a little anticlimactic. And I was also mad that like they believed Harrow so easily. It's like, y'all are gods. Like he's not saying anything. He's not proving anything. It's like he's literally
I feel like lying. It's one of those situations where you already are kind of like, I'm not a fan of this person. And then they do one little kind of thing that you're just like, yeah, that's it. That's enough to like be like, this person deserves punishment, right. And like in reality it's like all they did was maybe take the last piece of cake, like, yeah, that sucks, but that's not like the worst thing someone could do to you. And I feel like that's kind of the gods, like, we really don't like Khonshu, and like, oh, he did that, okay, that's it. Like I feel like that was their vibe towards it. but Ethan Hawke is just eating this role. He is so good
No, he's great. Like I mean, his vibe is so cool. And as much as I love Oscar Isaac, though, like I don't know, like he's already that wonky British accent we've kind of like talked about in the past. Like it's fine. It kind of fits the character. Like Steven's my favorite of the different personalities. He's the most interesting, even though like his accent's the hardest to listen to. But I didn't really feel his like channeling Khonshu scene.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I don't know. Like maybe I'm just nitpicking. But like the whole Ennead Khonshu Council of Gods thing was I wanted something more interesting. Like even the Jedi Council scenes were more interesting in the prequels than what we got here. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah, no.
At least the Jedis were interesting to look at. It was literally like 7, not even 7, it was like 4 dudes and a woman sitting on like thrones. I don't.
Yeah, I feel like you said, they probably wasted their budget on Khonshu and other things within the show that they were just like, yeah, no, you're not gonna get the other gods like in their full badassery type of thing. That's probably what it was.
In 3 episodes so far, I haven't seen people talk about this too much, but like Moon Knight shows up like in a total of maybe like 5 minutes in 3 episodes. Does anyone like complain? Have you seen any like complaints about like there's not a lot of Moon Knight in Moon Knight?
I don't know if I've seen those type of complaints, but I know people are very upset about the like retconning of like the Mr. Knight.
Oh yeah. That he's just like the goofy version of Moon Knight. When I think in the comics he's more brutal. He's kind of like more like he's smart. He's like the smart version of Moon Knight, where he's like kind of cool and suave.
Yeah, and I a lot of people aren't.
Yeah, I like goofy Mr. Knight though.
Yeah, I feel like it works for me too. But I don't know if I'd have a different point of view on it if I read character more, because when you read the character more, you have such a different like reaction to them changing stuff. Like for like Iron Fist still pisses me off to this day because he's one of my favorite characters in the comics, and it's like, oh.
Well, I wouldn't say that like I feel that they've gotten Moon Knight as wrong as those folks got Iron Fist.
No, it's not even. I feel
not even right. And to be fair to like, I don't think Moon Knight is even that well known a character. Like, I think you can take liberties with Moon Knight more than you could with Captain America or Hulk, right? Because Moon Knight is, I mean, even Dominic talks about, and he's the one who's always giving us the Moon Knight primer, and he's even like, I don't really know who the fuck Moon Knight is, It's like Moon Knight is not the like he's C-list at best when it comes to the Marvel universe. So speaking of Mr. Knight, the other scene in this episode that I feel like it kind of lost me, and I've seen some controversy around this. And I was curious what your take. The whole turning back the stars scene.
Yes, I'm like, how this has to affect like like timelines and shit. Like
that was like there's some other way you could have figured out where the stars were 3,000 years ago than like literally turning the stars.
That's how I felt like that it has to have some type of big like effect on something. And I know like some people like not everything has to affect the timeline, but I'm just, when we think about it, we talk about how, oh, well, when we have a full moon, like weirder things happen. People are
right. There should have been, or at the very least, there should have been like floods and
like we know that like you can say astrology is bullshit, but when people are like, this is in retrograde and this is going on, like it actually does have somewhat of an effect on the world. So I feel like to hurry up and go back to 3,000 years of stars, like I feel like that's gonna majorly like mess up stuff, like you were saying, the tides and like
because you're right. Like this isn't, people used to complain about like the end of the first Superman movie where he turns the Earth backwards. Like rotating the Earth the other direction is not gonna like make time go backwards. You know what I mean? Like there's science, and the thing about the Marvel universe is that like they've established that there is like science to everything. Like even we're talking about Thor, like the way they travel through space is there are rules to it, right? Like you can't just go from point to point without jumping through these like wormholes. You know what I mean? Like there's actual like science behind, and you know, this is at the end of the day, this is kind of nitpicky too, but sometimes like there's a suspension of disbelief, and other times there's like, this is where I think if Moon Knight was standalone and not connected to the MCU, it wouldn't bother me.
Yeah.
But this is where like this affects a whole bunch of other shit. If you could just literally turn the stars backwards. Because what are you turning? Are you turning the Earth in the direction that it was 3,000 years ago? Or are you literally moving the stars? Because that's some powerful ass magic. If you are moving the stars like however many light years to get them where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, that it's crazy. And I know people were like, well, imagine Doctor Strange just like sitting outside drinking coffee at night or something, and he sees like the sky moving, and he's like, oh, not fucking again. like yes, I can totally like.
That's how Vulture ended up in the Morbius universe. It was Khonshu's fault. It wasn't Doctor Strange.
Wasn't Doctor Strange. No, we'll see. I don't know. Now I'm very curious to how, like, because you know this show is a show that's happening before Doctor Strange is out. So I'm like, is there going to end up being after? Because I know you've only seen the first 4 episodes. So with 5 and 6, I'm like, is this gonna
right? Well, and let me say this too without spoiling, because as wild as that episode was, and particularly the star scene, there is a twist at the end of episode 4.
Okay. That
perhaps explains everything, and that what we've been seeing may not be what we've been seeing. I'll just say that. So, and you know, I haven't seen, you're right, I haven't seen beyond episode 4. My hope is that like what the twist of episode 4 sets up will be the actual direction of the show. And if that's the case, I think it's mad interesting if that's what it is. If not, if it's not what I think it is, and it's just kind of like a red herring, and it's not like the change in direction, then I'm not sure how I'm not sure how this fits in with the rest of the MCU. Again, it shouldn't matter ultimately. Like if a story is told well, it shouldn't matter. But this is the gift and curse of the MCU, right? Like, yes, you can't be in, like, the Batman works because you don't have to worry about Superman and Wonder Woman. But if it took place in the DCEU, then you get like that, the Peacemaker stuff. Like, that's what was so cool about the Justice League showing up at the end of Peacemaker, because you're like, Peacemaker talking all this shit about the Justice League. Wouldn't they do something about it? And then they show up at the end. It's like, oh, that's why. You know what I'm saying? Here, it's like Moon Knight's doing all this shit, and it's like, does this not affect anybody else? So yeah. And even like the existence of the Egyptian gods, how do they fit in with the Eternals, with the Asgardians? You know what I'm saying? With like, I think there's been speculation about how Bast is part of these same Egyptian gods, but kind of like split off and was like, I'm just going to be over here in Wakanda, you know? So it's real interesting. Yeah, it starts up different conversations. And then we know that the character that Christian Bale is playing in Thor Love and Thunder is the God Killer. So now it kind of comes to like, what if he's like a reason why certain gods are considered mythology and not real, because he's killed some of the gods that we are like, you know, that's why we don't think, you know, we didn't think Thor was real, and we didn't think the Egyptian gods were like a legit thing, and, you know, or Roman gods and Greek gods and all of that. So, you know, he could his character could maybe ultimately play a part. And like you said, I do feel like it is the gift and curse of like everything being interconnected, where you're just trying to figure out where it's interconnected and where it isn't, or whatever. But and if it contradicts each other, right? Like, like the existence of the Egyptian gods, then what does that mean for, like I said, the Panther god of Wakanda? Because Bast is an Egyptian god, right? But is Bast in Wakanda from Black Panther part of the Ennead and like split off too, the way Khonshu did? You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, maybe. And I think someone also pointed out Harrow's purple magic kind of resembles the heart-shaped herb and stuff. So that's what I was thinking too. I'm just glad that Marvel's taking a risk on a show like Moon Knight to begin with, just because you know, a character like Moon Knight is so obscure. The fact that they can, you know, be creative with it and be authentic to like Swana people by having like an Egyptian director and not kind of using stereotypes for Egyptian people in the show, at least. That's why I don't want to be too critical about Moon Knight, because at the end of the day, it's a positive.
I was gonna say that it was actually nice to see parts of Egypt that we're hardly ever shown. Like, oh, they actually do have, yes, modern buildings and, you know,
nightclubs.
Yeah, like it was nice to actually see that, because we hardly get to see that when it comes to showing Egypt.
Right. It's always like sand and yellow filters.
Yes.
As you talked about last week.
And then pyramids and, you know.
I think that's, you know, Moon Knight, we're finally catching up to where I left off. And maybe, again, that might be the other thing. It's like watching the Disney ones, I'm like, I already saw this. And I kind of like just tune out a little bit. So it's partially my fault, maybe, for not being fully invested. Maybe by the time we get to next week or the week after, where I'm like, oh, I didn't know this shit is happening. So maybe I'll be a little bit more interested, but we'll see.
Yeah.
So that's it for the Marvel portion of Hard Knock Life. We're going to swing back around after the break and talk about DC and what the future of DC movies might be. Guess what? Goalie Nutrition is sponsoring Hard Knock Life, and you can go to goalie.com to buy apple cider vinegar gummies, their ashwagandha gummies, superfruit gummies, and super greens gummies. And you get 10% off plus free shipping if you use the code HARDKNOCK at goalie.com. This is honestly, I've been taking the Goalie gummies now for a couple weeks, and I have to say, they're tasty and they're good for you. Have you guys been enjoying the Goalie gummies?
I really like them. They're yummy, but it's a nice to add to my like routine of already, like, I normally take just straight vitamin C, so it's nice to have like extra supplements.
For a long time, people have praised the benefits of apple cider vinegar. And, you know, as someone who's had to like drink straight apple cider vinegar sometimes when I'm not feeling well, or, you know, I have some joint pain and your mom is like, drink some apple cider vinegar. It's not the most appetizing home remedy, let's just say.
Right. It tastes horrible.
So, like, the apple cider part is like, ooh, does it taste like apple cider? And it's like, no, it tastes like vinegar. But ACV is very good for you. And the fact that Goalie has been able to put the ACV into these tasty little gummies made with pectin and fruit peels, which make them vegan, which is cool. So if you're vegan, you can still rock these gummies, because everyone knows gummies are usually made out of like gelatin and nasty shit. These are made out of complete non-GMO, gelatin-free, gluten-free, vegan ingredients, and you can get the benefits, all of the benefits of apple cider vinegar, taking these tasty, delicious, convenient gummies. So go to goalie.com and use the code HARDKNOCK, that's HARDNOC, just like the podcast you're listening to. Get 10% off your purchase of Goalie products and free shipping.
It's a much better delivery device for that apple cider vinegar.
Yeah.
These Goalie gummies are great. You get it, and it's a delicious little candy. And I've been enjoying the Superfruits one. I did feel kind of refreshed after taking a few of those.
Yeah, no, but I'm loving them so far, and they're definitely tasty. If you just want tasty gummies, at least just eat them for the yumminess.
Yeah. So go to goalie.com, use the code HARDKNOCK, HARDNOC, get 10% off your purchase and free shipping at goalie.com with the code HARDKNOCK. So I think they finalized the Warner Brothers Discovery merger. So now the company is officially Warner Brothers Discovery, which is such a shitty name. Because it's like two so vastly different entities. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's Warner Brothers, this like legendary studio of classic films, and like fucking, you know, reality HGTV. It's just like, what is the connection? Anyway.
Yeah.
So they've merged finally. And the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, the new CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, was quoted, I think, in Variety saying that like they're going to reassess how the DC Films portion of the company will be used going forward.
Oh. And
they're going to be looking for their own Kevin Feige. But they also want to be able to make standalone movies like Joker, like the Batman.
Uh-huh.
It's here's the thing, right? Like I feel like here's the new boss, same as the old boss. Because it's like everyone's always trying to figure out, what do we do with DC? What do we do with DC? And they seem like they finally figured it out, you know, with like the Suicide Squad and Birds of Prey and Peacemaker and the Batman and Shazam and Black Adam. Like, I was like, oh, okay, they'll just let people do whatever they want, connect where they want. Just have everyone just tell good stories, like we were saying about Moon Knight earlier.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be connected if it's a good story. Well, now they're just like, no, actually, we want to connect everything again. We want to be Marvel, but we also want to keep doing what we were doing. I don't know. It feels confused. And I feel like this is the problem with anyone who controls DC.
I feel like it's so frustrating because there's people who only know these characters based on what is in, TV and film, especially more in the live action realm, because there's a whole set of people who think anything animated is for kids,
right?
Which is ridiculous. But so there's people who genuinely have their opinions that DC sucks just based on what they've seen, especially from the movies.
Right.
So yes, there have been DC movies that are obviously good, but are great and amazing. But there's people who are just like, yeah, I'm not super into DC. They're kind of like, ugh. And you feel bad because when you're someone who maybe has watched even more the older cartoons and maybe do have actually some exposure to the books and that there's great characters from DC, but when they keep flopping it, it's hard to get people on board with your point of view that there is great characters in DC when you have this happening.
And I feel like live action DC in particular is at an inflection point right now because at least when the movies weren't doing well, they had the CW, but the CW I feel like is not as strong as it was in terms of the foundation of live action DC, because The Flash just announced Jesse L. Martin is leaving the show, even though it's being renewed for a 9th season. To be completely transparent, I haven't really been watching The Flash this season.
Yeah, I'm kind of behind. So.
I'm behind in that I haven't watched any of this season and most of last season. But I always told myself, if Joe West goes, I go. If they ever killed off Joe West, I would just stop watching. I don't think they're killing off Joe West. I think they're just letting Jesse do other things because he's been on the show a fucking long time. Mm-hmm. And I think the other announcement was that next season is an abbreviated season. And it's also the final season, which is kind of good. I feel like Flash probably should have ended 2 or 3 seasons ago. But with the Flash gone and Legends kind of up in the air, there's not Superman and Lois is I think going to be the foundation of the CW Arrowverse, but even that show's not really the Arrowverse. I mean, it is, but it isn't. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which is, and then Naomi's not Arrowverse. There's all these still these things. They announced a Gotham Knights show. But there isn't really there's no foundation like there was before. Even if you didn't like it, there was the Zack Snyder stuff. Even if you didn't like it, there was Arrow, right? But even that's kind of not around anymore. So I don't know. I just feel like this probably, if they're going to start over, this is probably the best time to start over. But I kind of liked where they were going, where we the DCEU is becoming more accessible with movies like Shazam and Black Adam. But you also had real creative people doing stuff like the Batman, and even if you didn't like the movie itself, Joker, won Oscars. You know what I'm saying? Legit Oscars, not just the technical stuff, but best score, best actor. So I don't know. I feel like this is just another opportunity for them to fuck it up. Is what I'm worried about. Yeah,
that's how it feels too, which sucks because I do want DC to win. But it's sad when they just keep being put in situations where people are, I don't know, as we talked about, there are pros and cons to doing the interconnected universe. And there's also, cons to not doing the interconnected universe. But I feel the problem is other companies too. It's not just DC or other franchises now. They're well, we want to do what Marvel's doing. And
right,
they can't do it because they're forcing it, and they're trying to get to their Civil War and Endgame before they lay down all the foundation that the MCU has laid down, and I feel like that's something that other franchises or executives up in the film industry are forgetting, is that no, they started with Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, and Thor, and then Captain America, the first Avenger, and then the first Avengers movie. They've been
doing this for literally 10 years. You know what I mean? Like at this point, more than 10 years at this point. And in fact, you know, we were just saying, even Kevin Feige isn't infallible anymore.
Yeah.
Like he's trying to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with these Disney Plus shows? Now I got these Sony people over here like saying stuff that ain't true, but like once it's out there, like fucking Michael Keaton's at the end of Morbius now, like what the fuck am I going to do with that? You know what I mean? Like, he can't even keep it all under control anymore, you know? So why would you want to even like play that game when even like the master of the game? I'm not saying that like and please, Marvel stands, do not come at me with like I'm being a hater. You know, MCU is still the most successful movie franchise in the world. But it seems are showing now where they weren't like up till Endgame, you know?
Yeah. And
that's all.
I just feel like, yes, they are starting to be in a place where maybe they have too many other projects going on that it's hard to keep it together. And I really think Kevin needs to get someone who he can trust to maybe run the shows more and just them keep in contact all the time and updating each other on what is going on so it flows a little bit better, and then Kevin isn't so like tied to just, you know, doing both and kind of being split thin everywhere. Like, and I know he has Victoria and Lou who are like, you know, his core team, but yeah, I feel like they need to throw at least someone else, and don't bring back Jeff Leb, but someone else.
No, I don't even think he's in the picture with the, like, he was part of that the split, really, right? Like Jeff Loeb and Marvel and Ike Perlmutter were like over here, and then Kevin Feige and the Marvel Studios people were over there. But that's what I'm saying. Like even with like trying to incorporate all of the various strands, they haven't been this phase of Marvel has not been as successful as phase 1, 2, and 3. Like that's just the truth, right? Like Eternals, as much as I like the Eternals, it was not considered successful, right? As much as I like Moon Knight, we even talk about how like some of the interconnectedness is probably what's bringing the show down in a way, because you're thinking to yourself, like that was what I said after episode 1. Like what I love about Moon Knight is that it's separate, feels separate from the Marvel universe. But then just because it feels separate doesn't mean it is. Like it's one thing if it like the Batman, like I said, you don't have to worry about like that don't make sense. Like Wonder Woman would blah 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 blah. But with Moon Knight, if you pretend it's not part of the Marvel universe, it's much more successful. But knowing that Captain America's over there or like Thor's over there, you're kind of like, well, that don't make any sense, you know?
I just think the changing the turning of the sky is really what is like, you're like, that's such a big thing in general. Like when you're thinking about it in the world, like that is gonna have an effect,
right?
On it's gotta like even.
And if Khonshu could do that shit, where was he when Thanos was here? You know what I'm saying?
Like yes, but it comes down to another probably situation of you can't interfere with, you know,
right, humanity or whatever. But that's what I'm saying. Like, but that was the Eternals problem. Like, you're getting to a point. Like, the movies have been around for 10 years. There's been so much mythology. Think about a brand new person trying to jump onto the Marvel universe now would feel intimidated. It's just too much. Like, I gotta watch 75 hours worth of stuff just to, or even I've seen like on Twitter people saying, do I have to watch WandaVision before Multiverse of Madness? Right? Like, maybe.
I unfortunately it's like, yeah, you kind of do. You have to have at least seen WandaVision. Even unfortunately, like I like Loki, but I know some people might not, they might be tired of him, so it's like you got to watch WandaVision and Loki and What If to
that's right. Even what I mean, that's the thing, like
it's just No Way Home,
it's just right.
Well, yeah, so
it's a lot of homework. It starts to become homework, and that's where movies as an interconnected universe, if it starts to feel like homework, I think you've lost the thread, you know?
For me, I think I don't mind watching all this other stuff.
Oh yeah. But you and I are outliers. As much as dominant as nerd culture is, I think there's you know, I'm not saying superhero fatigue. I'm not one of those people. But this conversation is all predicated on like, this is the game DC wants to play. And I'm just like, do you really want to just have like all these threads kind of like trying to manage it? Because it's not worth it ultimately. Just like at the end of the day, what made the MCU so successful is at the end of the day, their motto was not how is it all connected. It's tell good stories.
Yes,
That was always its difference between Marvel and DC. And once DC figures out tell good stories, then you're fine.
Yeah, I feel like for the most part, I feel like the MCU is still doing great on the let's tell good stories. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there are starting to be, like you said, you are starting to see where certain things maybe aren't flowing as well as they probably would have. And I think it comes down to trying to tell smaller, more contained stories that they feel like, okay, this is us, we can do this in a show instead of doing it in a movie. And it's becoming to a point where it's like, not maybe every character needs a show.
Right. That's the other thing. Like, because now we're talking about these 6 to 8 episode shows are essentially like 5-hour movies. Right.
Yeah.
So like someone did a thing on Reddit where they were like counting up all of the screen time of each of the MCU characters. And it's wild because like Tony Stark, of course, has the most screen time overall. And this is like, he's got like 10,000 minutes of screen time. But like in 5th place was Kate Bishop. And it was like, how does Kate Bishop have more screen time than like Dr. Strange? Oh, because Kate Bishop had a 6-hour television show where she's in like 90% of the scenes.
Yeah.
So like, even like, and I love Halle Steinfeld, I love Kate Bishop, but like, how the fuck does Kate Bishop already have like the 5th most screen time of the MCU in 13 years when she's not even had a movie yet, you know?
Yeah.
And like Captain America's only he came in like 4th because even in his
Loki 2nd.
Loki has more screen time than Thor. It's like Tony Stark, Spider-Man, because No Way Home was like 5 hours long. And I wonder if they counted like all 3 Spider-Man, they just multiplied it by 3. It was Tony Stark, then Spider-Man, then Captain America, then Loki, then Thor, then Kate Bishop.
That's wild. That Kate Bishop is so high up. Especially Kate Bishop is higher than Hawkeye. Like that. Yeah,
because I guess Hawkeye's amount of screen time in like the Avengers movies didn't amount as much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean it's so crazy when you think someone who has been around since he's in the first Avenger movie.
Yeah, he's in Thor.
He's in Thor.
Yeah.
That's the movie. I was like, wait a minute. He's in Thor for a little bit, and then.
But even Avengers, he's only in like probably a total of 10 minutes.
Yeah,
because he gets mind wiped, and then he's off screen for most of it.
Yeah, it's so crazy that like he's been in literally the big like phase 1 of MCU, and just the fact that someone who only came in phase 4.
Well, because like that's the other, like Wanda and Vision, I think round out the and I don't know how scientific. I mean, it's a post on Reddit. It could be all bullshit.
Yeah.
But it makes sense if you think about like why so many of the characters on the list had TV shows, right? It was like Wanda, Vision, I think maybe even Sam, and Kate Bishop having more screen time than like Natasha or Hulk, or you know what I mean, like people you associate more with the MCU than like a bunch of, you know, that was what was the interesting thing about the Marvel shows, is that like it gave more shine to folks who didn't have a lot of shine in the movies. But it's just, at the end of the day, like it's great for people like me and you. I'm just trying to think of like a general casual fan just having to like catch up on all this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. I've fallen off on like Star Trek. I used to be a huge Star Trek fan, but like there's just too much Star Trek shit now. Like I can't watch any of it because like there's like 4 seasons of Discovery, and then there's 3 seasons of Picard, and there's 3 seasons of this. I'm just like, I'm out. I don't watch any of it because it's just too much. And then I have to, like I said about the Arrowverse, I'm kind of out on the Arrowverse. I haven't watched any Arrowverse shows in a long time. So like, it's too much. And if it's too much for like me, where I run a website and do a podcast about this shit, imagine like a casual fan.
Yeah, no, I understand for people who are just like, it's beginning to become too much. Like I was thinking about it. I was like, my mom hasn't really finished a lot of the MCU shows just because me and my brother always watch them like late at night. And, you know, so I'm like, my mom who likes going to see the movies, like she's probably going to see, you know, Multiverse of Madness and be very confused in a way because she only watched like 1 or 2 episodes of WandaVision. She's like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
She saw all of, Captain America or the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. She's seen all of that. she's seen a good chunk of Loki. She maybe needs 1 or 2 episodes left to finish Loki. So I just feel like, she hasn't seen any of What If. So I just feel like there's certain things that she might see in Multiverse of Madness, and she's gonna be like, what is happening?
I mean, honestly, I don't even know what to expect with that movie at this point, right? Like,
yeah,
are they going to like tie in other things, or is it just going to be like different versions of Stephen Strange? It's like they're going to do No Way Home, but with Doctor Strange, and I think that's less effective because like we don't give a shit about like 6 different Benedict Cumberbatches like we did Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, we'll see. We have another month before that one comes out. But at the end of the day, one other thing. Speaking of DC, and all of the headaches that they got to deal with this merger and then reconfiguring the universe, they had like the perfect movie to kind of do this with, and that was The Flash. And you guys mentioned this last week with Ezra Miller's kind of like run-ins with the law over the last few years.
Yeah.
And we don't even need to talk about the secrets of Dumbledore, but like you put all your chips in Ezra Miller, and we're not even sure Ezra Miller is going to be around when the movie comes out next year, if that movie even comes out next year.
Like they might not even be the Flash anymore. There's a good chance that they might just end they are going to end the Flash show and just be like, all right, Grant, you're gonna be the Flash in the movies now.
I know they already shot basically the entire movie. They'll just have to like somehow, deep fake Grant Gustin into it somehow.
or again, if it's not coming out now until like what, July?
June.
This June or next June?
It's next June, right? June 2023. Yeah.
Yeah, so they have time where they can film like a couple of pickup scenes where they're adding Grant Gustin and he's gonna be the Flash going forward.
I mean, I think that makes sense. Does Grant want to do it though? He's been the Flash for 10 years now. Does he want to like do
he
the
might
Flash
not
movie?
want to do it anymore, so they might be finding someone else. But my point is like by the time that movie's out and like you see the end result, like Ezra is not gonna be the Flash probably anymore, just because unfortunately they're in a point where they're just more of a PR nightmare.
I mean, this is also the problem of like pushing the Flash to next year, is that if they don't do that, right? If they don't reshoot or, somehow, if it's not Grant, somehow like find a new actor to play the Flash, this is like a year and a half of like potential more PR headaches. Like I was saying about the Secrets of Dumbledore, like he wasn't part of the press tour for Secrets of Dumbledore, which opened this weekend. Because he was out in Hawaii getting arrested and like stalking people and shit, right? Like, because imagine if he was on the press tour, he would be getting questions about, hey, why are you like choking fans at events, right?
Yeah.
So he was never part of the Dumbledore press tour. You can't have a Flash press tour without the Flash. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
exactly.
You can't. I mean, I know they're going to focus on like the Michael Keaton of it all, and it's basically just going to be a Batman movie.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I just feel like it's in such a like terrible spot, and I feel like they were a decent Flash. I enjoyed them, and now it's just kind of.
I mean, this was the movie I was looking most forward to coming out when it was coming out this year. This was my number one most anticipated DC movie this year, was The Flash. Primarily for Michael Keaton, but still.
Yeah, no, I get it. But now, just this movie is
it's a shit show now. I have no idea what to expect.
Just from like everything that is like conspired with this movie till now, it's just like
it's cursed.
It's so I don't know what happened, but yeah.
They did reveal Michael Keaton in the new bat suit, which was kind of cool. It was like an updated version of his classic bat suit, so that was nice. Nice. They're like, hey, be distracted by this shiny object over here and stop talking about Ezra Miller, So anyway, funny. That's it for this week of Hard Knock Life. Brittany, what's nerd popping?
I'm kind of late to the party, but I just got into the Netflix show Lock and Key. So that's actually really, really fun. And I feel like they tried to, I remember the marketing of it, and they were trying to push more the aspect of the kids in the show and trying to push it a lot like how Stranger Things is in a way. And I feel like I don't know, I just feel like they mismarket it, because what the show is about is very or the way the show is very different than what like I remember the first like season trailer being, or how they were pushing the show. So
are you familiar with the comic at all, the Dark Horse comic?
No, but it's a really fun show. I haven't finished season 1 yet. I'm kind of towards the end of season 1, but I really like it. It's a lot of fun. And now that I know it's only getting like it's gonna end out of season 3, I'm like, oh, all right.
But at least you have a full, you have an end goal. You don't have to worry about catching up on 12 seasons like you are with Dexter.
Oh yeah, I'm almost I'm on the final season of the original run of Dexter now, by the way, for those who want to know where I'm at in my Dexter journey.
Oh, real quick, speaking of Stranger Things, what did you think of the trailer for Stranger Things?
I still haven't watched it.
Oh, okay. The only thing I'll say about it is it's like, this is the lean to me. I feel like it leans way more into horror. I know Stranger Things has always been like a horror / sci-fi Stephen King homage, but I feel like this one in particular, like the trailer itself reminded, maybe because Robert Englund's in it, but it definitely reminded me more of like the 80s slasher film kind of horror, which I was never a fan of, so I'm a little kind of like do I want to watch this season? But anyway, it's the final season of Stranger Things too.
No, it's not the final season. They're getting a season 5.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, really? Well, first of all, the kids all look like they're 30 years old. So I just assumed it was the final season.
So
and the trailer makes it sound like it's the final season.
So what they announced is they're doing season 4 split into 2 parts, and then season 5 is like it.
Oh, well, maybe it'll follow them when they're in college, because they all look old as fuck in this trailer.
Yeah,
I didn't even recognize half of them. Like my daughter was like, "Where's Will?" And we realized we saw him. He just looks like a 30-year-old man now.
Yeah, no, they're all like about to be. I know the one who plays Mike is about to turn 20. So I'm just like, Jesus. I remember when they were like 12, and I am like, and that's how much the pandemic is like.
Wow, that fucked with time. No, it was Khonshu moving the sky backwards. That's what fucked with time.
Yes. But I mean, I know that they use like before a Netflix show comes out, it's filmed a year in advance. Right. So it's like, the pandemic messing things up is just like how much like the kids were already getting older, and then like a pandemic, and yeah.
That's what to stream on Netflix. Real quick before we go, I wanted to shout out, I watched a movie over the weekend. Finally, it's been on Showtime for a month now, but it's fitting that I'm talking about it today since The Batman is out on HBO Max. When Batman was first released back in March, it was simultaneously released with another Colin Farrell movie called After Yang, which I finally watched. So you can still do your Colin Farrell double feature and watch The Batman on HBO Max and watch After Yang on Showtime. Real quick, it's a sci-fi story about a family who adopts a child from China. So they also purchase a robot assistant's quote sibling to help raise the child, but the robot also gains consciousness, and it's about like family and memory. It's beautifully shot. It's very touching and moving to see this robot kind of like become human. It's that is kind of tropey, like if you watch Star Trek, if you saw Bicentennial Man, it's like it's got those vibes, but it's very beautiful and it's very moving and touching story of this Yang robot character and how he brought this family together. So I would recommend watching that and then watching The Batman for your double dose of Colin Farrell. And with that, Brittany Monet, how can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Hi Brittany Monet. And then you can also check out my other 2 podcasts that stream on one thing is at Naomi Podcast, and you can pretty much find that everywhere where you can find podcasts, and the Lituation Room is the other podcast that is a part of that stream.
You can find me on Twitter at The Real Chow. That's _real_chow. And I'm at Real Keith Chow on Instagram. Follow the Nerds of Color at the Nerds of Color on all platforms, and go to hardknockmedia.com to find this podcast. Give us a rating and a review. Subscribe to all the podcasts in the Hard Knock family. Go to youtube.com/the Nerds of Color for videos, and patreon.com/the Nerds of Color. Until next time, put the stars back where you found them, Mr. Knight.
Well, it's the NOC in full color. You see me? The Hard Knock Life. Comics, movies, and TV. Yeah. Pop culture. hard knock life, but not the chicken kind. More like the people in